It's springtime here in Kansas City, and there are trees everywhere. Today I'm going to give you my top tips for painting trees, how we can simplify trees, the colors that we can use to mix up and create a feeling of depth in your work, and of course, how to paint trees that have a vibrant sense of light. In this scene, there are a couple of fantastic verticals here. I have these two trees on either side of this house. While the paper was still damp, I dropped in a little bit of color for the trees. Now that my paper is dry, let me show you what I do in the next phase here. So I re-wet some of the paper to get some softness in the background. I'm painting around some of that light that I laid in my first wash. Incorporating light values, middle values, and darks into your trees can elevate them and can really add some sophistication and elegance to your work as well. There are some basic rules in the structure of a tree that we need to follow in order to make our trees feel believable. The branches can't be larger than the trunk, so we have to remember that. It can be helpful to start close up to the tree and then do a nice sweeping brush mark away from the tree. And what that will do is help create an organic looking, nice brush mark. Also notice that I'm holding the brush further back. I don't want this tree to be really tight with some really straight lines. So the further down you hold your brush, the tighter that you end up painting. So move your hand further back and try to paint tree branches in a really loose way. Also notice that I'm not using a lot of just straight lines. I'm doing small little broken marks because a tree is a very organic shape, and shadows can be hitting one part of it and not another part. That feeling of broken shapes of light and dark is what I'm trying to create. And the looser that you can be with these trees, the more realistic that they're going to look. Let me zip ahead here. As we get those darks into the scene and into the trees, it's really allowing that light to feel vibrant. And now I'm using a rigger brush, and I'm holding the brush further back, and I want to add some more branches to really give this tree a nice feeling of finish here. And again, you don't want any big branch, larger branch out here than what is supporting it. You want to be mindful of that your branches are tapering off as they get further away from the tree and keeping the brushwork nice and loose. Trees don't just have to be a solid dark shape. If we can work in some light on those trees from the beginning of the scene, you can be left with a really compelling, realistic, organic feeling tree. I want you to take a look at this reference photo. Notice how there are trees all over the scene. How do we distinguish between the trees that are closer up and the trees that are in the background? If we can't create an order and separation between the background and the middle ground and the foreground, our painting is going to feel very disjointed and overworked. And you know that there are thousands of branches and leaves back there. So the tendency is to really overwork that grouping of trees and to add way too much detail. I want to show you how I painted the scene and how I was able to mass together trees and create separation and organization between the background and the middle ground. Here is what it looks like after I painted the first wash of my scene. I laid in some soft color for these trees. Now I have the job of really beginning to paint the background and organize the painting. I start over here on the left, and I'm trying to see and paint these trees in one big group. I want you to see how I handled the background of this scene. I cooled the green down a little bit. That makes it feel further away. And as the trees are closer, I add more saturation and vibrancy into that mixture. And that little change right there automatically helps us create a feeling of depth. The temptation is when we are painting the background that we really want it to look like something, but we can paint it in a very minimal way where it can serve the purpose of a background. Now, as I get closer here, you can see I've once again added a little more saturation, and I'm leaving behind a little bit of that light that I left within the first wash of the painting. Now I'm massing together, organizing, finding connections. I cool the background down. I have more saturation. Let's talk about what color mixtures I'm using back here. My standard green that I start with is Cobalt Turquoise and Raw Sienna. Now, when I need to cool down the background, I mix in a little bit of Cerulean or Lavender or some Ultramarine Blue, something to cool it down. And that gives me a little bluer tint of green that I can use for the background. Now, when I want more vibrancy, Then I can take that same mixture, I can add some cadmium yellow medium. That's Daniel Smith paint again. I use something cooler for the background, something that has a little more vibrancy to it for the middle ground, and then if I really need to push that color, I add in a little bit of cadmium yellow. So those are the mixtures that I use, and that is really the philosophy here. Grouping, simplifying the background, and using more texture, broken edges, and vibrancy in my color as I get into the middle ground and closer up. So take a look at your paintings, think about how you're painting trees, and you might find some ways that you can simplify and also bring more life and vibrancy to the trees that you are painting. Have you ever been really excited about a painting and you get all set up, you find that right reference that you're excited about, and then it's time to go and you feel lost? You ever had that experience? Well, I have a free resource that I want to give to you today that can help with these problems. My 5 steps to plan a successful watercolor painting. I walk you through the crucial planning phase of your painting that will help you understand what you're going to paint first, second, and third. The planning is really so important, especially in watercolor. This medium is harder to correct. It's so immediate. So having that plan is very important. I send you a PDF that you can download. And the great thing about this is you can have it on your phone, you could print it out, and you can take a look at these crucial planning steps before you start each painting. All you have to do is follow this link here and download my 5-step guide to planning a successful watercolor painting.